Hello, and welcome to Beyond Shakespeare. I am your guest host, Liza Graham. Rob does know about this. We're not completely pirating him. This is an exploring session of Nobility and Gentleness by John Heywood and John Rastell. And in the room, we have an excellent team of readers and discussers. We have playing the role of the knight. We have.
Hello, I'm Greg, and I'm from Stratford-on-Avon, and I'm not a professional actor in any way, shape, or form.
And playing the role of the merchant, we have.
Hi, I'm Eric, and I will mute it occasionally because I've got I can hear motorbikes racing in the background of all things. No.
Yes. This is good. And playing the role of the plowman, we have.
I'm Steve Longstaff. I'm not a professional actor, but I can't hear any motorbikes.
1 out of 2 ain't bad. And yes, and I will be reading the epilogue spoken by a philosopher. What exactly his philosophy is, we don't quite know yet. We're going to run this. This is quite a long play in comparison to our normal ones. So we are going to run the first half and then discuss, and then the second half and then discuss. This play is by John Heywood. It dates from around 1520s, 1530s. Heywood was related to everyone important. He married a woman who made costumes, and her father, John Rastell, is the co-writer of this play. She was also the niece of Sir Thomas More, and their grandson was John Donne, the poet. So basically, it's a who's who of Tudor England. And without further ado, let us start with scene 1. We have a merchant and a knight on stage. Merchant, take it away.
Oh, what a great wealth and prosperity it is to any realm where merchants be, having free liberty and intercourse also, all merchandise to convey to and fro, which thing I have used and the very feet found, and thereby gotten many £1,000. Wherefore now, because of my great riches throughout this land, in every place doubtless, I am magnified and greatly regarded, and for a wise and noble man esteemed.
Master merchant, I hear you right well, but now in presumption bethink ye excel to call yourself noble in presence here. If men know what your ancestors were, and what of great stock descended ye be, your father was but a blacksmith, perdie.
Why, sir, what then? What be you, I pray you?
Oh, marry, I am a gentleman, I would ye know, and may dispend yearly 500 mark land, and I am sure all that ye have in hand of yearly rent is not worth 5 marks.
But I would thou knewest, for all thy cracks, I am able to buy now all the land that thou hast, and pay for it out of hand, which I have got by mine own labour and wit, and which thou hast thine ancestors left it.
Yet art thou but a churl, and I have a scorn that thou shouldst compare with me, a gentleman born.
Why, what callest thou a gentleman? Tell me.
Marry, I call them gentlemen that be born to great lands by inheritance, as mine ancestors by continuance have had this 500 year, of whom now I am descended and come lineally, bearing the same name and arms also, that they bear this 500 years ago. Mine ancestors ever also have been lords, knights, and in great authority, captains in the war, and governors, and also in time of peace, great rulers, and thine were never but artificers, as smiths, masons, carpenters, or weavers.
All that is true, I will not deny now, yet I am more gentleman born than thou, for I call him gentleman that gently doth give unto other men lovingly, such thing as he hath of his own proper. But he that taketh aught away from another, and doth give him nothing again, therefore ought to be called a churl evermore. But mine ancestors have given alway to thine ancestors such thing as they, for by their labors did truly get and win. For mine ancestors builded houses wherein thine ancestors had their dwelling place. Also, mine ancestors have made tools to all manner crafty men belonging, whereby clothes and every other thing whereof thine ancestors need have had, with the same tools have ever been made. So, mine ancestors have given their labors ever to comfort and help thine ancestors.
I deny that ever the ancestors of thine did ever give to the ancestors of mine at any time anything except that they gave somewhat therefore either ware or money.
Mary God, oh mercy, John, for that now that is even a pig of our own sow. How can lords and estates have aught in store, except the artificers do get it before? For all metals be digged first by miners, and after wrought by the artificers. Wool, fell, and every other thing that is necessary to man's covering, and all other things that men use and wear, is always made by the artificer.
I grant that the artificers do make it, but because commonly they have little wit. Gentlemen that have lands and dominion of all such riches have the most possession, for a reason whatever it should be so be, wise men to have fools in captivity.
Marry, as for wit and subtle invention, mine ancestors with thine may make comparison, for though my father were a smith, what then? Yet he was a marvellous quick-witted man, and could work as well for his part as any in this land using that art, and devise new fashions in things that he made, that every man to buy his ware was glad, and carved and graved in iron and steel, both image and letters marvellously well. Then thereon lay gold, and gilded also, fine and pure as any goldsmith could do. My grandfather also was a mason, of great wit as any in this region, and could build a castle and tower right well, in which some of thy kinsmen now do dwell, wherein appeareth right good masonry, with images and arms wrought curiously. My great-grandfather too, though, was a weaver, of woolen yarn and other great gear, marvellous pleasant works to behold. Linen, diaper silk, and cloth of gold, that all such subtle things as I have rehearsed, lo, mine ancestors by their wits could work and do. And as for thine ancestors, I know no thing they could do by their wits worth praising, but use, occupy, and waste evermore, such things as mine ancestors made before. And thou and thine ancestors, having the occupation of such things wrought by the operation of other men, oughtest not to be praised. Therefore, but the praise ought to be given evermore. For the artificer which by his wit it is devised, and so cunningly wrought it. Wherefore, if thou say that wit and policy be the things pertaining to gentry, thine ancestors may never compare with mine, for their acts prove them wiser than thine. For thine never did no thing in their days concerning quick wit that was worthy praise.
Yes, it was a lewd javel, I would thou knew'st it. Mine ancestors have had more wisdom and wit than thine have had, and could do also many things that thine could never do. For in the country at sessions and size that they have been elect to be justice, and for their wit and great discretion they have judged and done correction upon thine ancestors, artificers that have made false wares and been deceivers and helped for to maintain everything that is to the commonwealth pertaining. They have also, in time of war, both in this land and other countries far, dukes and leaders of the whole army, and by their wits and warlike policy, study forecast and diligent travel, have won many a great field and battle, and Thine ancestors that were there were never able to bear shield nor spear, and were never yet but soldiers and pioneers, nor never had wisdom to be rulers. But because mine ancestors have ever been discreet and wise, they have had authority.
Nay, nay, thine ancestors came never all to authority for wisdom principle, for though some were wise, yet some of them again had small discretion, little wit, or brain. But because of the long continuance of their great possessions by inheritance, by the foolish manner of the world we see, for that cause ever they have had authority.
And I say that good reason agreeth to it. For though the father have no great wit, the son that is wise should never the more lose his land nor authority therefore. For he that by study, diligence, and pain great lands or possession doth attain, his own life is too short and too light for to take the fruit of his merit. Reason would therefore that after his life his heirs before strangers have prerogate use and the continuance of such possessions, maketh noble men and gentle conditions, and they whose blood have long continued as gentlemen so they should have honoured, and so mine ancestors long time have been great possessioners and in authority. Therefore, considering my great lineage, my blood, my noble birth and parentage, thou art not able to compare with me neither in gentleness nor in nobility.
Here the ploughman cometh in with a short whip in his hand, and speaketh as followeth.
Now here is bibble babble clitter clatter. I heard never of so foolish a matter, but by God's body, to speak the truth, I'm better than either of you both.
Vaunt, cankered churl, from whence comest thou?
Marry, foolish peevish door, Eden from my plough. Thou say'st, wast anything there withal?
Yea, marry, thou lewd villain and rude rascal, it is for the full ill beseeming to perturb any gentleman's talking.
Gentlemen? Ye, gentlemen? Jack Herring, put your shoon in your bosom for wearing. I count myself by God's body better than you both and more worthy.
Avaunt, knave! Get thee out of the gate, or I shall lay sword on thy pate.
That shall I prove. I make God avow never in better time. Have it thee now.
He beats them.
Now hold thy hand, fellow. I thee pray, and hearken what I shall to thee say.
Say, knave, say. What canst say?
Hold thy hand, I pray thee. I come no nar. I am a merchant and no man of war.
Thou art not honest. I tell thee plainly to make any quarrel here so suddenly to perturb our communication.
Here may ye see, sirs, by God's passion, two proud fools make a cracking. When it comes to point, dare do nothing.
Our coming hither and our intent is not to fight by way of but by way of argument, every man to show his opinion, to see who could show the best reason to prove himself noble and most gentleman.
God, all the reasons, if ye began that ye have made thereof, are not worth a fly.
No, sir, I pray thee then tell me why.
First, as touching nobleness, I say, there is neither of you both did prove or lay any of your acts whereby that ye should in reason prove you noble to be, or thereby deserve any manner praising. But all the effect of your arguing to prove your nobleness was but only of the deeds and acts of your ancestry, and of the acts that your ancestors did before. You are the nobler never the more.
As touching myself, I dare make comparison of as noble deeds as he has any done, for I am and have been one of the chivalry at the commandment of my prince ever ready, and every time of war have been captain and leader of 1,000 men or twain. Which with a horse and harness, spear and shield hath jeopardy to my body in every field, and rents of my lands hath spent liberally, and kept a great house continually, and helped to punish thieves and bribers alway, to the great tranquillity of my country. And you, master merchant, will never take labour, except it be for your own profit and lucre.
Go to now. Go to, master merchant. There is a reason that giveth you a taunt. I trow more than you can answer well.
Nay, I was peevish and rude, Jack Darrell. I can make an answer so substantially whereto neither of you is able to reply.
Thou canst answer, my reason do.
That can I well do.
Then go to, fool. Go to.
I say, the commonweal of every land is in feet of merchandise doth principally stand. For if our commodities be uttered for naught into strange lands, and no riches brought, hither therefore we should come to beggary, and all men driven to live in misery. Then we noble merchants that in this realm be, great wealth to this land do we utter our wares and buy their goods cheap, and bring them hither with great profit. And pleasure daily cometh to this region, to all manner of people that here do one. Furthermore, you see well with your eyes that of strange lands and commodities we have such need of them that be there, that in no wise we may them forbear, as oil, silks, fruits, spices also, gold, silver, iron, and other metals more, old drams and drugs belonging to physic, which men must needs have when they be sick, which in this realm cannot well grow. Our country is too cold and not hot enough, yet without which things we should live in misery, and oft times for lack of them we should die. And I spend my study and labour continually, and cause such things to come hither daily, for the comfort of this land and commonwealth, and to all the people of great profit and health. And for such noble deeds, reason will ban that I ought to be called a nobleman, and neither of you both that here now be in nobleness may compare with me.
Now well hit, by God's body. Well hit, one that hath but little wit. Answer me one word first, I pray thee. What is the noblest thing that can be?
What sayest thou thereto thyself? Let's see.
Is not that the noblest thing indeed, that of all other things hath least need, as God, which reigneth etern in bliss? Is not he the noblest thing that is?
Yes, marry, no man in reason that can deny.
Well then, there is no reason thereof why, but because he is the thing omnipotent, and is in himself so sufficient, and needeth the help of no other thing to the help of his glorious being, but every other thing hath need of his aid.
Harry, that is very true, and well said.
And likewise, that thing that hath most need is the thing that is most wretched. So, sufficiency is ever nobleness, and necessity is ever wretchedness. And he that hath more need of that thing for the preservation of his living than his fellow hath, his fellow must needs be, by this same reason, more noble than he.
What then?
By the same reason, it proveth, lo, ye be but caitiffs and wretches, both two. And by the same reason prove I shall that I am the noblest man of us all. For I have no need of no manner of thing that ye can do to help me of my living. For everything whereby ye do live, I nourish it, and to you both do give. I plough, I till, and I stir the ground, whereby I make the corn to abound, whereof there is made both drink and bread, with the which daily ye must needs be fed. I nourish the cattle, and fowls also, fish and herbs and other things more, fell hair and wool, which the beasts do bear, I nourish and preserve, which ye do wear, which, if ye had not no doubt, ye should starve for lack of clothes because of cold. So, both you should die or live in necessity if ye had not comfort and help of me. And as for your fine cloth and costly array, I cannot see why ye ought or may call yourself noble because ye wear it, which is made by other men's labour and wit, and also your delicate drinks and viand, by other men's labour, be made so pleasant. Therefore, Master Merchant, now to you, I cannot see, but I am able and may live without you or your purveyance. For food and cloth I have sufficient of myself for living necessary. And now, Sir Knight, to you I say plainly, I see not that ye can anything do for the common weal or aught longing thereto. But each man, being in authority, having wit, may do it as well as ye. Therefore, to speak now of necessity, there is neither of you, both, but ye be in more need than I. Therefore, I say plain, I'm more noble than either of you twain.
Now, that is a foolish reason, so God me save. For by the same reason thou wouldst have every beast, fish, and fowl more other than to be more noble of birth than a man. For man hath more need of bodily covering than they have, for they need nothing. The beasts have hair, and also thick skin, the fish scales or shells to keep their bodies in, the fowl's feathers, and so everything. By nature hath his proper covering, save man himself, which is born all naked, and therefore he should then be most wretched.
Marry, no man can make a better reason, for that is a sure and true conclusion. For if a child, when he is first born, were not helped and covered, he was soon lorn. He hath no strength to help him, never a dell. Beasts have power to help themselves well. So, considering man's body indeed, a beast is more noble, and man more wretched, because he hath need of many more things than beasts have to help of their livings. Also, man must daily labour and sweat to get him full sustenance, as drink and meat. The ground he must dig, and the beasts kill. For bread and meat his body to fill, grapes, fruits, and herbs nourish diligently to make good drinks to refresh his body. But all brute beasts have covering natural, sufficient to cover their bodies withal, and find their food ever on the ground ready, without any pain, labour, or study. So every man, by reason of his body, is more wretched and in more misery than beasts be. Yet this notwithstanding, man is most noble of creatures living, not by his body, for that is impotent, but by his soul, being so excellent. For by reason of his soul intellective, he subdueth all other beasts alive, and compelleth all other beasts that be, by his wit, to relieve his necessity. Beasts have no wit themselves to defend, or can get no more than God hath them send. Take any beast that wear his hair, and do clip it off bare against winter. Well, that beast hath no manner of policy to get other covering for his body of cloth the skins, nor hath no wit to put it upon him, though one have made it. Nor can build no house, nor kindle no fire to warm his body if need should require. But yet a man hath wit and understanding, but to help himself in every such thing. So, man for his soul intellectual is most noble creature of beasts all.
That is a very good and pregnant reason. Yet methinketh thou makest a digression from the argument that we first began, which was to prove who was most gentleman, which we disputed. I would thou hadst heard it.
I just heard what he said, every whit.
Then show thy reason, therein thou go.
Nay, by God, I've somewhat else to do. I must go buy me a ha'porth of grease, the spokes of my cart therewith to dress. Trow ye that I will leave my business for your babbling pomp and foolishness? Nay, Master Mary, I will not do so, for I can now to the market go, and for 8 as much grease buy, it should cost me in our town a penny. I tell thee plainly without any boast, halfpenny is as well saved as lost.
Stroll for an halfpenny therein is no waste. Tarry with us a while. Perhaps thou mayest by our acquaintance now get here more than thou gattest with thy cart this month before.
Draw for thy counsel, third of thought. Trowest I will give up my plough, a cart, and follow thy foolish appetite and mind? Nay, I'm not yet so mad, nor so blind. When I'm at my cart or plough, I'm more merrier than either of you. I've not changed my life nor my living to have made a great lord or a king. There is no joy nor pleasure in this world here, but ill belly, fill belly, make good cheer. Be it prince, lord, gentleman, a knave, it's all the joy that here he can have. But these covetous and ambitious wretches, who set their minds in honour and riches, so much that they be never content, they live ever in pain and torment. But a man that can this means find, to have food and clothes, a merry mind, and to desire no more than is needful, that is in this world the life most joyful, which life in this world no man shall acquire, that he subdue his insatiate desire.
I see well thou hast a cursed apish wit. Then if thou wilt depart, I pray thee yet come again when thy business is due.
For what intent now should I do so?
For we will in our old argument proceed, who shall be called gentlemen indeed, and we would be glad to hear thy reason.
But I will come again upon a condition, that ye will wait upon me, both twain, and be not out of the way when I come again.
We will not be far hence.
Then I will not fail.
Then I pray thee not let thy promise quail.
Oh, here is my finger. Now, trust me well, I will come again if I have my health, for by God, I promise you one thing, and I'm as true of my word as the king. And if I find you not here, then by my troth, I shall call you, openly, false knaves both.
Thou shalt find us true in everything.
I think so, except lying and stealing.
Then farewell for a season, adieu.
Fare you well, both I dare say as true as some that be tied at a post in Newgate.
Exit the ploughman.
Well, now he's gone, Godspeed while his gate. But what shall we do now at the mean season?
Let us take some new recreation, and come again here and keep our appointment.
Now thereto I am right well content, and in the meanwhile, good Lord of thy grace, preserve all the people here in this place.
End of part 1. So,
Love the bell.
well, you know, traditionally it signals the end of a round of a fight, so I'm not quite sure who's winning at this point. Yeah, that is a question. Who is winning?
Almond, I think. In the leagues of who's the most fun to play, I'm sorry, the knight is definitely winning.
Yes, I do love how snotty the knight is becoming in your capable hands.
But I think the plowman has a good part as well. So, you know, sort of going, these two are idiots. I could just bash their heads together and get it over with.
Yes, if nobility was determined by who could win in a fight, it probably is the plowman. So we've got essentially 3 stratifications of class at the time. We've got the knight, who is hereditary nobility, although a knight is not a knight is not very noble. He doesn't seem to be a duke or an earl, but his title is hereditary and his family is old. Probably goes back to the Doomsday Book or something. Then we have the merchant, whose argument is, you wouldn't have anything if I didn't get it for you, and so I'm probably nobler than you. And then we have the plowman, who says, you wouldn't have anything if I didn't make it for you. And conveniently, the plowman has a bunch of craftspeople in his ancestry, saying, you know, a smith, a mason, a weaver, saying, you know, you would have nothing at all if these people didn't make you clothes to wear, and if I didn't till the earth and get you corn, the wheat to make bread or beer out of. Beer, always a good argument. And it does seem to me that the playwright makes the plowman, in a way, the truth teller, but the merchant does have some good points.
It's a sort of paradox, isn't it? That you've got sort of two views of, I don't know, society, which are brought into a place here where they conflict with one another. And one of them is that, you know, one's sort of sector has true nobility and therefore has precedence, and the other is something which is more like, this is what I contribute. But everybody contributes, and behind that is the idea of a sort of, you know, sort of stable, harmonious world where everything plays its part, you know, so that the body politic, as it were, you know, every organ has a kind of function. And it's quite a sort of strange clash, really, because you can't have, you know, it's sort of the idea that everything must work together and everything has its place doesn't work with the idea that there is something called, you know, you divide into two, which is noble and non-noble. And so it's a sort of organic metaphor, isn't it? And I think that's one of the reasons why everybody kind of is making good points. They're making good points when they talk about how useful they are to everybody. Although I have to say the knight's points are perhaps less persuasive.
I was wondering about that, you know, because the merchant and the plowman both make points which resonate very well with my mindset now in 2020, dear Lord, what a year. But so does the knight have anything going for him? Greg, what's the best argument you can make for the knight?
I can't, he's a toffee-nosed kid.
He talks about having served in war. Did he?
I doubt every word he says.
Well, the problem is that if served in a war, it'll be somewhere else, won't it?
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, if we're talking 16th century, you know, well, I don't know, actually, the Scots, early 16th century, there's wars against the Scots, aren't there? But, yeah, and the sort of you can't have a sort of organic metaphor, and keep on going on about how you used to be really useful. It makes you sound like some, you know, sort of an appendix or something, a vestigial organ. You know, it's kind of was useful at some point in our evolution, but we've stopped eating grass. Therefore, we should get rid of all the nobles. You know?
It's difficult, you know. Again, I'm trying to divest myself of my 2020 viewpoint, but it's difficult not to read this as, you know, a populist, almost a socialist play. Heywood himself was neither a knight nor a noble. Heywood was a middle class. Well, Heywood. The first record we have of him being paid for anything was as a singer and a player of virginals. So Heywood starts off as a professional musician, and then he wins courtly favor. And when the monasteries get dissolved in the Reformation, he gets given some land, which gets him an income and puts him among the middle class. So this isn't a noble or well-to-do or university. I actually don't know what Heywood's education was, but this isn't some toffee-nosed Etonian writing a play about how the lower classes should all defer to their lords, as we might expect if this were an earlier 15th century drama. We're in the 16th century, by God, and these are modern times.
Well, they did kind of, I mean, in a sense, this sort of three parts is in itself a hangover, isn't it? The sort of the old division between the sort of military caste and the clerical caste and feudal kind of peasants. And in the 16th century, they started evolving much more kind of sophisticated models of how society worked in terms of the way they thought about it and theorized it. So it's a strange one, isn't it? There's a kind of, it's sort of backward looking. It's sort of working with a sort of traditional idea of society that lots of people would recognize, but equally they might think of as being perhaps a bit out of date. The ploughman is often associated with this kind of I'm going to call it radical, but skeptical interrogation. There's a figure right through sort of 15th and 16th century writing who voices
right down to Piers Plowman, right?
Well, yeah, all the way back to that. But even when the real power had decisively shifted away from kind of massive people who worked on the land, that figure was still a really useful one in a sense. The way that we think of we have concepts like the street. The word on the street this is where the people are, this is where the kind of life of society is on the street. Kind of ploughmen are like that. They've got that connection to something which is essential and important to loads and loads of people. But how much of a drama is it, do you think? Because
I wonder. I don't know whether we have context for this as to what occasion it was written for, if any. The Heywood Rastell family was a very theatrical family in and of themselves. It may have been simply written for their family to perform and then published in the hopes that people would buy it for other families to perform. But that's just speculation. I have no certain knowledge. Stephen, you're the scholar in the room.
Yeah, well, I'd need to research it. I have no idea. I really don't know.
Yeah.
I'm having a Scooby.
Well, there is a bit, the fight where the ploughman beats them is quite theatrical.
Yeah, and there's a sort of, I don't know, I mean, Greg was finding a real sort of, I wouldn't say conversational, but, kind of the rhythms of the speech, this is not kind of dry and arid, there's so much kind of there that he was pulling out in terms of characterization. I mean, that personality was also coming from the way it's written. And I suppose we've got the sort of pleasure of a well delineated type of person here.
It's true. They are three very strongly drawn characters. Now we should start part 2, and again we will read straight through and discuss after the epilogue. So the ploughman has left on condition that the other two stay right there and meet him when he comes back. And they have, and the knight says, "Let us now take some recreation." Presumably they've both had a pint or 2 or 3 or more. And here, and in part two, here comes the plowman, but he doesn't see them. Take it away, plowman.
Yeah, I may walk and wander to and fro. I see not them which I would speak to.
Enter the merchant and the knight.
Yes, by the rood, here we be both twain, to whom thou didst warmest to meet here again. To dispute the question that we began, which of us could prove him most gentleman?
Thou saidest thou heardest our arguments all.
So did I, neither good nor substantial. For thy foolish and peevish opinion was because of the great dominion of the lands and rents whereto thou wast born, which thine ancestors had long time before. Thou thinkest thyself a gentleman to be. Well, that's a foolish reason, seemeth me. For when Adam dove and Eve span, who was then a gentleman? Then came the churl and gathered good, and there began first the gentle blood. And I think verily ye do believe that we came all of Adam and Eve. And to speak by reason, great possessions make no gentleman, but gentle conditions. That is the cause and best reason why one should be called a gentleman truly. Furthermore, mark well this reason then. A man's ancestors have been gentlemen and virtuous and good to commonweal, that ought to be reported never a doubt to the praise of a child, which doth refuse such good conditions and the contrary use. He ought to be dispraised them all, because his ancestors have showed him before a precedent of gentleness and virtue, which good example he does not ensue. The gentleness of his blood clear lie, and him does decay and utterly die. So he that useth conditions virtuous, though that his ancestors were vicious, ought not to be dispraised, therefore, ought to be honoured and praised them all.
Yet methinketh more honour should be given to him which is noble and of noble blood and kin.
But then if thou wilt look honoured to be, because of thy blood, you might well and see the vilest beggar that goes by the door. Had ye not both one God and Creator? He came of one first stock and progeny, both of Adam and Eve, you will not deny. Beggar and thou were both doubtless conceived and born in filth and uncleanness. Thy blood and the beggar's of one colour be. Thou art as apt to take sickness as he. Thou be in the body wounded, thy flesh is as ill as he's to be healed. Thus I have known many of this, they're proud of their birth, that all their lives would give them to no labour nor learning, which brought them to miserable ending, that in poverty wretchedly did die, or fall into theft and hang therefore full high. So I say, virtue and good conditions then is that which maketh the very gentleman. Though the father may bequeath to his son his riches, his land, his possession, it may neither give nor bequeath unto him in no wise after his death his virtue nor his gentle conditions. Well, they cannot descend as other possessions. If thou wilt be a gentleman, needs thou must then use virtue and gentle deeds.
Why desire men praise evermore of the acts of their ancestors done before?
Well, one cause thereof is for lack of learning. They perceive not the reason of the thing. Another is because there be many that call themselves gentlemen unworthy, which live voluptuously and bestial, do no good in the word at all, but live in pride, sloth, and unthriftiness, because they have no manner goodness, nor property, nor virtue in them, whereby any man should think them any praiseworthy. Therefore they seek for commendation of the acts that their ancestors have done.
Then I marvel men desire to be called of the blood of them that excelled in worldly honor. As kings and emperors some were tyrants, some were conquerors, and few desired to be called of their blood, which have been called just men, virtuous and good, and used in different justice and equity, meekness, abstinence, or willful poverty.
If I should tell thee the very cause true, It's because they love no such virtue, which virtue and gentle conditions should be, longing to gentlemen of property.
If gentle conditions be the cause low, then will I compare with both you two. For I have ever used gentle manner, and so have mine ancestors that before were. For first of all, when this world began, long after there were but few people, then men had sufficient of everything, without great labour for food and clothing. All things was in common among them, doubtless, but afterward, when people did increase, each man to increase his pleasure, and volupte of goods and lands, desired property, whereof great strife and debate did arise. Then such as mine ancestors were, that were wise, did study to make laws, how the people might be, living together in peace and in unity. And against enemies always defended the people that tilled the ground and laboured, the people perceiving them their goodness, their great wit, discretion, and gentleness, were content to give them part of the profit, coming of their lands which they did get, as corn, cattle, and such things as they won. But after, when that coin of money began, they changed those revenues and were content to give them money and annual rent. So for their good and virtuous conditions, they came first to lands and possessions. So possessions began and were first found upon a good and reasonable ground.
My God, sweet body, thou liest falsely. All possessions began first of tyranny. When people began first to increase, some gave themselves all to idleness, would not labour, but take by violence that other men gat by labour and diligence. And they that laboured were fain to give them part of their gettings in peace to live, or else for their lands money a portion. So possessions began by extortion. And when such extortioners had oppressed the labouring people, then they ordained and made laws marvellous, straight and hard, that their heirs might enjoy it afterward. So the law of inheritance was first begun, which is a thing against all good reason, that any inheritance in the world should be.
That is such a shameful opinion, seemeth me. For when I have laboured, and by great study got and purchased lands, truly it is good reason that I have liberty to give those lands to whom it liketh me, or else to let them descend lineally to my child or cousin of my blood most nigh. For inheritance must needs be a good thing, because so much good thereof is proceeding. Every man to his blood such love doth bear, because the land shall descend to his heir. He will build thereon, and the land improve, and make corn and grass to increase and grow. Graft fruit trees, and nourish timber, and to increase fish, make ponds with water. Stop bushes and weeds which destroy herbage, and all barren ground bring to tillage, and amend the highways that be thereabout, and do many other good deeds, no doubt for the profit of his heirs that shall be, and for the commonwealth of his country. Which things surely he would never intend, if the land should not to his heir descend.
By thy reason, no other thing is meant, but a good deed upon an evil intent. When men for love or pride do such good deeds, the devil therefore shall quit them their meeds.
Whether God or the devil quit them therefore is now to our purpose never the more, for their minds and intents no man can tell. But touching inheritance, this I wot well, much God good cometh thereof, and daily doth grow.
Nay, much ill cometh thereof. I shall prove how. For these men that be of great possessions unto their blood have such affections that any land like them that lieth nigh them, their poor neighbours, they will destroy them, or by extort means they will them compel the land for half the money worth to sell. When they take the money, They will alway ever borrow, never willing to pay. And when they shall die, ye see the experience. Few of them have remorse of conscience, to make any manner of restitution of any land so wrongfully gotten.
Thou hast spoke so sore against gentlemen, but what sayest thou of merchants then?
Good and worshipful also, and many charitable deeds they do. Build churches and mend the highways, make almshouses and help many decays. But some be covetous and full falsely get their goods by deceit and usury. And when they have £1,000 in their coffers, they would rather suffer their neighbours to starve for hunger and cold and to die, than they will have to give them a penny. Yet, moreover, when any of them be promoted to rule or authority, they disdain all learning, law and reason, and judge all by will and affection.
Thou art but a railer to speak so sore against gentlemen and merchants evermore. Be not ploughmen and others that drive the cart, and such rustical fellows as thou art, false shrews and live as viciously also as gentlemen of land and merchants do.
Yes, these villain carters, almost each one, hath neither conscience nor devotion, for bribe and steal everything they will, if they may secretly come there until. And as for prayer and divine service, they love them in no manner wise, nor would they labour nor work do, if need of living drove them not thereto.
The gentlemen and the rich merchants that be use much more vice and iniquity.
Why thinkst thou merchants and gentlemen not?
I say not so. That is not my thought. Not yet so foolish or so mad that for I know any good, though some be bad. Yet some will suffer his debts unpaid to be, and die and jeopard his soul, rather than he will any of his lands minish and impair that should after his death come to his heir. Some of them so proud be of their blood, and use small virtue, and do little good, but give all their minds and their study to oppress the poor people by tyranny. And some of them think this for a surety is the most honour to them that can be, to be able for to do extortion, and to maintain it without punction.
By Gog's sweet body, thou art a stark knave, nobleman and gentleman so to deprave.
Oh, thou proud awesome fool, whom dost thou knave? I trow thou wouldst a good blow or two have, with a good whipstock to teach thee courtesy.
A vaunt beggarly knave, I thee defy.
What? Wilt thou wage battle by and by now? I shall prove straight, I make God a vow.
And here he beats them.
Keep the peace, masters, hold your hands for shame. To make this business ye be greatly to blame. You will disturb all this company.
Nay, marry, for cause to make 'em merry. To walk such a proud fool is but sport and game.
Thy body were not for worldly shame, I should cut thy flesh, or else see thy heart's blood.
Sir, hold your tongue. Your words will be nothing good. We lose here with this lewd altercation much good pastime and recreation.
What better pastime here canst thou have than to hear one call another knave? See such a proud fool walked with a whip.
But I love it not. Therefore, fellowship, leave this brabbling, and with good argument, try the matter that is most convenient.
I will try howsoever he will. With words or deeds, I'll answer him still. My God, if he will not be content to be concluded by good argument, I will conclude him one way ere that I go. I shall prove it on his pate, that shall I do.
Thou speakest like a clerk that have little wit, when a case is put if he cannot soil it. by no manner of reason that he can lay, then he will answer him this wise and say, beware what ye say, sir, now I advise you, for it is treason or heresy that ye speak now, to the intent to rebuke him openly before the unlearned people that stand thereby. And he can do no, and if he can no colour of such thing find, that he will vex and chafe in his mind, and cast out some lewd words of quarrelling, to turn the whole matter to chiding and fighting. And so dost thou like one that were mad.
I would thou knewest, thou foolish lad, neither mad nor drunken yet. For mine opinion, I have well proved it by substantial reason and argument that inheritance is not convenient. Show better reasons than thou canst do.
Nay, reasons may soon be answered unto, for God defend that estates of inheritance should be destroyed, for that by good ordinance gentlemen of lands undoubtedly bring up their children full honourably. Some put to the school to learn cunning, to instruct the people in virtuous living, some made to be active in martial deeds and able to defend the land when need is, and the rustical people that have no land, such things be not able to take in hand. Wherefore, if we should destroy inheritance, we should destroy all good rule and ordinance.
For such men as have great rents and lands, and no estate but term of their lives, and everything thereon will nourish and save for the great zeal and love that they only have to the commonwealth of their country. For God's sake, lo, those people be they that be worthy to have possessions, and such people of virtuous conditions, and no other, should be chosen governors, and they should have lands to maintain their honours, term of their lives, as long as they take pain for the commonwealth. This is good reason plain. So that no man ought to have any land, but such as be apt and have charge in hand for the commonwealth, as princes and rulers, bishops, curates, preachers and teachers, judges, ministers, other officers that after commonwealth be executors, and valiant men of the chivalry that be bound to defend the people daily. Such men as be apt to all such things should have lands to maintain their livings. So, inheritance is not beseeming to let them have lands that can do no such thing. Nor, I think it not reasonable neither, one man to live by labour of another. Each man is born to labour truly, as a bird is to fly naturally. Nor a man ought not to have such liberty to leave lands to his child, whereby that he shall lust for to live in sloth and gluttony, compelled to do naught but live voluptuously.
There is always good remedy for that. That is to compel them to do somewhat, so that each man having inheritance have some authority and governance, wherein he should take pain and busyness to constrain him to eschew idleness.
Then this great mischief should follow of it. Oft times they should rule that have little wit, or disposed to be proud and covetous, or to live after their lusts voluptuous. What if such men had authority? Many things, no doubt, misordered should be. Where justice should be, there would be tyranny. Where peace should be, war, debate, and envy. There's no good reason that I can see to prove that any inheritance should be.
Yes, that shall I prove by good authority. For read in the Bible, and thou shalt therein see, God said to Abraham, Tibi debo teram hanc et semine tuo, which is as much to say, to expound it true, I shall give this land to thee and thine issue. Here is a good proof that it was God's will that Abraham and his blood should continue still as possessioners and have the governance of that land as their proper inheritance.
Well, thou answerest me now, even like a fool. Some of those fond clerks that go to school, where one putteth to them a subtle question of philosophy to be proved by reason. and they have all their wits and reason spent, and cannot tell how their part to defend. Then they will allege some authority of the laws, or else of divinity, which wise men may deny. And yet well that of philosophy the principles of contrarian be unto the ground of divinity. Philosophers agree hereunto, quod mundis fuit semper ab eterno, and divines, quod in principio omnium creavit Deus terram et caelum. That is promised openly even now, only by natural reason to prove how that inheritance ought for to be had.
By Gog's body, sirs, I hold you both mad. You be like some women that I know well, when they should any matter unto a man tell. They will tell 20 tales by the way, nothing to purpose to the matter that they did first intend and to tell and declare. And in like manner now both ye do fair. For ye dispute now whether inheritance be a reasonable thing or a good ordinance, which is a matter nothing pertaining to the question moved at the beginning. For the question was, which of us all three could prove himself most gentleman to be?
As touching that we have spoke all said, each man for his part as much as can be laid.
Nay, I have reasons left whereby I can prove myself of us all most gentleman. Neither of you both can void by reason.
If thou have aught else to say, now speak on.
Then do you both answer me this short clause. Is not gentle conditions the most principal cause to make one to be a gentleman?
Peradventure, it may be so. What then?
Peradventure, quotha? Nay, I shall prove that by examples many one, for music maketh one a musician, grammar to be a good grammarian, also geometry a good geometrician, and churlish conditions a churl for to be, and so of every other state and degree, and where gentle conditions be doubtless in any person, there is gentleness. Then as virtue maketh a good man, so gentle conditions a gentleman.
All those points I think must needs granted be. What argues more thereof forth, let us see.
How sayest then to pride, wrath, and envy?
They be naught and evil, I think, verily.
And what is meekness, patience, and charity?
Every one a gentle and good property.
What is covetous and liberality?
The first good, the other naught for surety.
And what is gluttony, sloth, and lechery?
They be not all who can that deny.
What abstinence, good business, and chastity?
Virtuous and gentle properties they be.
Sith ye granted this, I shall prove plain I am a gentleman. So is none of you twain. First, for pride, your raiment showeth what ye be. For ye will never be content, except that ye have the finest cloth and silk for to wear, of orient colours, and all your gear so costly, and your houses gilt gloriously, as though you would therein even yourself deify. Ye covet evermore goods, lands, and rent. Whatsoever ye get, never content, wrathful ye be moved to anger anon, and envious disdaining every man. As for me, I am content alway with a poor cottage and simple array. I disdain no man, and yet patiently can suffer to be called knave, and not angry. Sometime I call him knave again in haste, and when I have said, my anger is past. Ye have your beds so pleasant and soft, wherein ye ease yourselves too long and too oft, which maketh your bodies so tender to be, that ye cannot endure labour, like me. With no manner of coarse food ye will be fed, with pleasant wines and most whitest bread, with flesh and fish most delicate and fat, and all fruits and spices that can be gat. And when ye have had such pleasant refections to assuage your carnal insurrections, whatsoever she be, wife, widow, or maid, she come in the way, she shall be assayed.
Thou liest, slanderous churl, for I think of troth thou usest such vice more than we both.
Nay, by cock's body, I use no such life. I am content with Black Maud, my wife. Trow ye that I care for these nice proud prims, these painted popagays that hold up their chins and look so smottily, as who say they would have every man woo them that doth them behold? Took man for all such venereal work, as good as the foul as the fair in the dark.
Thou sayest true. Draff is good enough for swine.
Yet thou answerest to no reason of mine.
Thy reasons all right well answer I can, for I say it seemeth a noble man to have rich apparel and clothing, and goodly houses of costly building, and that each man according to his degree be known from other and what they be. For if such costly things were not made, work for poor people could never be had, and many folks then should fall to idleness, which is the mother of vice and wretchedness.
Yea, but I delight no such vanities worldly. I delight neither in sloth nor gluttony. I dig and delve and labour for my living, never idle, but somewhat ever doing. Daily I run and go bare, sweat and swink. I eat brown bread and drink small drink. Content with coarse meat, whatsoever it be, so it quench the hunger, it sufficeth me. These points I use which I have rehearsed now. Be not these gentle conditions, I pray you.
If thou use them, then need compel thee thereto. For if thou couldst, hardly thou wouldst otherwise do.
What I would do then ye cannot tell. It's not to purpose. But this I wot well, since that I use my life in such good manner, with such gentle conditions expressed here, more than ye both do still continuing, and since that gentle conditions is the thing to make a gentle man, the cause principal, wherein I use my life most of us all, who can by reason deny that? But that I am most of us all, most gentle man.
In faith, if thou be a gentleman, therefore thou art a gentleman against thy wilful sore.
Since I see he standeth in his own conceit so well, that opinion we shall never expel from him by no argument or reason. Therefore, now for a little season, let us depart from him. I hold it best. Then we shall have with him some rest.
I agree thereto, for Crighton saith thus, contra verbosus nole contendre verbis. Contend nor argue never in no matter with him that is full of words and clatter.
Wherefore, a season let us both depart.
I'm agreed thereto with all mine heart.
Oh, it says, and will you depart and be gone?
Yea, that we will. Farewell for a season, for to tarry here longer we see no great cause.
Exit knight and merchant.
Fare thee well, as wise as two doors, and I pray God send you such grace both twain to be stark cuckolds or ye come again. Now, masters, they be both gone away, therefore one word, now art what I say. We see well now by plain experience, when a man is set in a wilful credence, all to fortify his own opinion, God himself would then within reason, in effect, it shall no more avail than with a wit to drive forth a snail. Therefore, no remedy is that I can see for evil men that be in authority. Let them alone, till God will send a time, till our governors may intend of all enormities the reformation, and bring in their hands the rod of correction, and the reforming of injuries themselves see, and will say precisely thus it shall be. For exhortations, teaching, and preaching, jesting and railing, they mend no thing. The amendment of the world is not in me, nor all the great arguments that we three have made, sith we reasoned here together, nor prevail the weight of a feather for the helping of anything that is amiss. We cannot help it, and since it so is, nor let the world wag. Home I will go, drive the plough, as I was wont to do. Pray God send us peace. I will no farmel. Therefore, masters, all now, fare you well.
The ploughman exits, and as he does so, the knight and the merchant re-enter.
Now, by my troth, I am glad that he is gone.
And so am I, by sweet St. John. I heard not a churl this 7 years show such cursed reasons as he hath done here, for the maintenance of his opinion, yet he's deceived for all his reason. For it is necessary that rulers be to have possessions to maintain their degree, and those few to drive the multitude of all the other people to labor to fall. For if the rulers drove them not here too, the people would be idle and nothing to do.
The most reason is that governance should come to such rulers by inheritance, rather than to have them choose by election, oft times by dread meed and affection. Men of evil conscience that great tyrants be, read old chronicles, the proof ye shall see. And though they have great wit and learning, yet so proud they be thereof, they fear nothing. Neither God nor man, but evermore still, without counsel or advice, follow their own will. But they that by inheritance rulers be, though they have no great learning, yet we see it maketh them more fearful and better content to follow wise men's counsel and advisement. And since that it hath been so long continued, inheritors to have rule and so long used, and that they have ruled us by, and that they have ruled by as good discretion as the other that have be chose by election. If that order of rule by succession of blood should be destroyed, it should do hurt and no good.
That reason is so great no man can debar. Nevertheless, that churlish knave, that Carter, after his fond opinion, thinketh thus, himself more gentleman than us.
Therein he lieth, for by experience we see that gentle conditions most commonly be in them that be of noble blood born. For take 20 carters which never were before acquainted, let them be together. Take 20 strange gentlemen in like manner. These churlish carters, I dare well say, will not agree together scant one day without chiding, quarrelling, or fighting. Each one will steal from the other, and be picking and strive which of them at the Scot shall pay least, and endeavour them who can play the knave better. But those gentlemen that I warrant you will study, who can show to other most courtesy, and of their gentleness will profit to pay for the other, and show what pleasures they may. So touching gentleness, I say, surely men of great birth use it most commonly.
There can be no truer saying nor sentence, and the cause thereof we see by experience. For these poor wretches that have nothing must be niggards, churlish, and despairing. But gentlemen be taught to be liberal, and so they may be, for they have withal.
And as touching nobleness, that argument which the ploughman made late proverb evident. Sorry. And as touching nobleness, that argument which the ploughman made late proveth evident, that gentlemen born to land needs must be for sufficiency of most nobility. For beside God's gifts of grace and of nature, as wit and boldly strength, yet they be sure of other riches, as of land and rent, to avoid need, so they be more sufficient of themselves than other poor people, doubtless, than of need of strength then if need of strange help cause wretchedness, and sufficience because of nobility, men born to great lands must needs most noble be. For it is impossible that nobleness be in them which live in need and wretchedness.
A better reason no man can devise. And yet, furthermore, I think likewise he that hath great abundance of riches may use liberality and gentleness. And so also it is ever necessary that some live in wealth and some in misery. And let churls babble and say what they will, it hath been so ever and will be so still. For it is my almighty God's purveyance, wise men of fools to have the governance. And they that rule well, I beseech Jesu to send good life and long to continue.
Ye sovereigns all, discreet and excellent, before whom this dialogue showed hath be, touching 3 points by way of argument. First, what is gentleness, and what nobility? And who should be chose to high authority? These questions they be so high and subtle, few dare presume to define them well. Yet I think now, under your corrections, the thing that maketh a gentleman to be is but virtue and gentle conditions, which as well in poor men oft times we see, as in men of great birth or high degree, and also vicious and churlish conditions may be in men born to great possessions. And further, as touching nobility, yet standeth much part, I think, doubtless, in sufficiency reason can agree. But that sufficience, making nobleness, must needs be annexed unto goodness. For sufficience is not the cause principal that God is noble, but his goodness withal. So virtue is ever the thing principal. That gentleness and nobleness doth ensue, then these heads, rulers, and governors all should come thereto because of their virtue. And in authority they ought not continue, except they be good men, discreet and wise, and have a love and zeal unto justice. Wherefore, sovereigns all that here present be, now mark well these reasons here brought in, both against men of high and of low degree, for this intent only, to rebuke sin. For the best way, that is, for one to begin to convert the people by exhortation, is to persuade them by natural reason. For when that a man by his own reason judgeth himself for to offend, that grudgeth his conscience, and giveth compunction into his heart to cause him amend. But such blind beasts that will not intend to hear no good counsel nor reason ought by the law to have sharp correction. But then, if the laws be not sufficient, which have been made and ordained before, to give therefore condign punishment, the princes and governors be bound evermore to cause new laws to be made therefore, and to put such men in authority that good men, just and indifferent be. But because that men of nature evermore be frail and following sensuality, it is impossible in a manner, therefore, for any governors that be in authority at all times just and indifferent to be, except they be bridled and thereto compelled by some strait laws for them devised. As thus, that no man such room occupy but certain years, and then to be removed, yet that while bound to attend diligently, and if he offend, and surely proved, without any favor that he be punished. For the punishment of a judge or officer doth more good than 1,000 other. And unto that such orders be devised substantially and put in execution, look never to see the world amended, nor of great mischiefs the reformation. But they that be bound to see the things done, I pray God of his grace to put in their mind to reform shortly such things amiss. And though that I myself now, per case, thus mine opinion have published, or any of my fellows in this place, in any point, have us abused, we beseech you to hold us excused, and so the author hereof requireth you all, and Thus I commit you to God eternal. Amen. Here endeth the play.
Amen, amen.
So this, I found that second half quite exciting. The first half I found entertaining, but we're basically questioning everything and rebuilding society from first principles here. What do you guys think?
I like the fact that, at least to me, the Knight and the Merchant didn't, it sort of went, yeah, we're still like we are originally. there's no, oh, we're so sorry. There's sort of is, but then it's like, yeah, we were right.
They start the play fighting, but fighting with the plowman unites them somehow, which, you know, Karl Marx would definitely make hay out of.
Oh.
And the knight's dictum that poor men can't actually be virtuous or gentle. But going back, the plowman says he questions the very principle of inheritance, which in the 1520s or 1530s was quite a bold thing to do. Do you not think, Stephen? Ooh, you're muted at the moment.
I really must learn how to do this through the medium of interpretive dance. So much easier.
That's what this play is missing.
I wonder where the philosopher sits in all of this, because the philosopher seems to be addressing the question, what is to be done? So, I mean, it is quite a, you know, this is the stuff, you know, the story about, I mean, this, I'd always thought that this was a much later kind of development, you know, the idea of reasoning from first principles. What was society like right in the beginning? Where does property come from? Theft, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I always thought that was a much later thing. And it does seem to kind of, I mean, the play sort of has its cake and eats it in the sense that it sets up the two opposing characters to the ploughman as not being smart enough. You know, the implication kind of is that there are no arguments. It kind of leans, you know, and the sort of Greg's, you know, sort of snottiness, you know, it sort of indicates really a kind of slant to it. But the question after all this is, you know, you ask the questions, nobody can come up with a coherent story. What happens after this kind of challenge or this revelation that things are not solidly bounded? And incidentally, I can't remember, was anybody here in the Jack Straw reading?
I was.
Yeah. Adam delved and Eve span, who was then the gentleman. You know, I think we said at the time that proverb, which you know, is associated with kind of social uprising 140 years earlier, is still going strong there and is still recognizable. I've lost my thread now, but we still have the philosopher who comes in and goes, yeah, okay, all right, you know, nice debate, guys, but what does all of this mean for, and implicitly here, I guess we're addressing those in authority, aren't we?
Yeah, the philosopher does say something about ye sovereigns all that be here assembled, which, again, what would people in hereditary authority think of watching this play, especially, Stephen, as you say, with that slogan associated with unrest? Eric, what do you think?
I was going to say that it's interesting that the merchant talks about his ancestors as being like, you know, a weaver, a smith, you know, craftsman, and then like he's become a merchant. So I was wondering whether this is like the sort of, like historically, maybe this is a response to sort of the creation of a new social class, because at some point I think merchants didn't really exist. Well, they did, but like the sort of middle class, upper middle class didn't really exist, and then they sort of were invented. I guess I don't know. I don't know. Have enough historical context to sort of.
It's.
Yeah.
I think there was more mercantile trade going on at this time than there had been before. I think mercantile trade had always gone on, but I think it's much more systematized at this point. What do you think, Stephen?
Well, I was just going to sort of expand that to think maybe about a City of London context. So there you have lots of merchants who are at least officially, part of a trade. And the trade might be cloth workers, but you would be a merchant. You wouldn't actually be working cloth yourself. So I wonder if the point that Eric was making speaks to a particularly kind of, what's that word, metropolitan perspective on such things. And London especially, but towns in general, had, this is where the merchants are. They're not in the countryside with the knights and the ploughmen, So there's this kind of conflation here that the ploughman is kind of, either the ploughman's not a real ploughman or the merchant's not a real merchant, if you know what I mean. They're kind of, one or other of them is a symbol. Because you're not going to get the three of them living in the same space, are you?
Yeah, probably not. Yeah.
So, and wasn't there a reference to Newgate or some other London landmark?
Yes, I think there certainly was a reference to hanging. Was there a reference to Newgate? Do either of you two remember?
Was one, I don't think it was directly, it was just, they just said Newgate for some reason, but I'm not entirely sure why. I can't remember the quote, sorry. Yeah, it's, as some, then fare you well both, the ploughman says, fare you well both, is, I dare say is true as some that be tied to the post in Newgate.
Ah, yes, he's saying they're both going to go to jail.
That makes sense. For loitering. No, I'm kidding.
Well, they have been on this stage quite a while.
Yeah.
I think
I thought he was going to set them up. I mean, maybe the ploughman was more interested in the conversation.
So I wonder about the context here. I suppose, wouldn't it be easier to just go and look it up and find the context? But this sort of idea of a debate, I mean, I can think of two contexts. One is a school or university context, but another is a courtly context. It's precisely, actually, what does make nobility? Well, it's being able to sit here and understand all of this stuff, in much the same way that, I don't know, in the Elizabethan era, being able to turn a sonnet in praise of the Queen, or to be able to sing or to dance. Cultural achievements are associated with nobility and gentleness, sophistication, in other words, which is kind of speaks to the point that the knight and the merchant make at the end, which is, it's all very well to have these qualities, but in real life, the people who display these qualities are the people who've got a bit of money.
Well, I think here we see Heywood as who started out as a professional musician and a professional writer, knowing which side his bread is buttered on and where his audience and his patrons are. But on the other hand, like other writers of his era, I don't think Heywood started out as an upper class person. And the arguments he makes seem certainly a lot more sympathetic to the ploughman.
Yeah, but having a good argument doesn't necessarily get you anywhere. It's like saying, between the four of us, we could probably come up with a really good argument against, capitalism or something.
Well, this entire play, but
Yeah,
I mean,
yes.
or the peddler's prophecy, or I don't know.
Yes, but where do we go?
Yeah.
What is to be done?
That's true. I mean, power is power, and those in power aren't going to give it up simply because someone else won the argument. Not that we're being topical at all.
It is striking, isn't it? All this stuff about inheritance and rent seeking. It is, considering this play is 500 years old.
And saying also that what makes a gentleman? Is it sufficiency? When the word sufficiency is used in this play, I think it means sufficiency of means, as in material wealth. Is it sufficiency? Is it gentle conditions? No, it's virtue, it's goodness. So how do we determine that those in power are good? And the philosopher, weirdly, in the epilogue, I mean, not weirdly, but unexpectedly in the epilogue, makes the case for fixed terms of authority. Now, in the sort of middle league of power, I think those were a thing at the time, that a mayor would serve for a fixed term. I don't know if judges or justices of the peace would serve for fixed terms, or if those positions were lifelong. But the philosopher says basically, if you're in power for life, then it's impossible that you should be good for all that time. So you should just be appointed for a term. And if you screw up, or if you go into it with wrong motivations, there should be consequences, which again is quite a bold thing to say if your audience are gentry or nobility.
It's quite an absolutist sentiment in a sense, isn't it? That, as far as I know, the actual administration of justice is pretty much done on a voluntary basis throughout the country. There aren't very many judges. We don't have a police force. We don't have a civil service.
We have justices of the peace.
Yeah, but it's, as far as I know, it's not a royal appointment. I think it's certainly outside the cities, So there's a kind of, I mean, the philosopher at the end seems to be saying, behaving as though all of this is sort of, I don't know, salaried posts, which you can stop people from, you can get people out of. But I'm not sure that's how it worked right across the board. It sounds a bit more like the sort of thing that's associated with a court. So, I mean, people would be granted monopolies for life and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think Heywood himself was granted certainly lands. He may have also been granted some rents or other marks of favor.
I guess if we've got, if we've got a date for this, which is either after or anticipating the dissolution of the monasteries, this is the sort of big bang in terms of huge amounts of wealth that previously is kind of locked up in the church suddenly being made available to other people. And I wonder if it's quite specific to kind of debates here. Who should rule, who should be called gentle, who should have these, who effectively, who should fill the space that was filled in political social life by the church? There's a big church-shaped hole everywhere. And, the ploughman's going, well, these bloody ancient nobility, they're not nobility, gentry, which is the lowest local kind of level, isn't it? These people aren't up to it. It doesn't sound like merchants are up to it. What shall we do? So even though it is really, it's very philosophical, and it still speaks to us now, which is pretty amazing when you consider it. Maybe it's also speaking to very specific sort of social, economic, cultural moment.
That's a really good point. Heywood himself, this is only a cursory gathering, but he's a Catholic, and I don't think he converts to Protestantism. I think eventually he has to leave the country when Elizabeth takes the throne. And so, yeah, I mean, but you're right. It seems a point when the iron is soft and it's a question of which hammer gets to hit it and shape it. And you're right that it's an upheaval in which some people are upwardly socially mobile very fast. The church is thrown down and a lot of people climb up pretty speedily.
Could I sort of be Rob for a moment and say, how would we actually get this to work on a stage, do you think?
Well, I think you do it the same way. Like, remember Nature the play. Well, I think in a similar way, although that's a bit more visual, but I think it's a lot like, it's got that debate format where, like, reason versus all the vices, basically, versus sensuality, I think it was. I can't remember. So you've got, like, sort of, they basically end up in this kind of debate form, which is quite weird. It seems like more of a court martial type thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and Greg, what are your thoughts?
It's a tough one. I think I don't want to take it out of the form. I definitely want it to be one of those plays where we take it out of the theatre, either out of the theatre context or redefine the theatre, if that makes sense. It feels like you need not necessarily audience participation, but at least the ability to see the audience.
I do think the audience is a fourth character, fifth if you count the philosopher, but a fourth character on the stage, and maybe one way to make it more stage worthy would be to have the audience vote on it at the end. Although I think there's one point towards the end where they specifically decry democracy, and the knight says, you can't have people chosen by election. Oh my God, how terrible. That's after the plowman leaves, I think.
Yeah.
But there are some moments that are very theatrical, not just the fights, but, for example, the point at which the plowman basically catechizes the other two on virtues and what that's a sort of back and forth, one line at a time. What do you think of vice and virtue? And at the end of that catechism, he says, well, you've just proven that I'm the greatest gentleman, and let me tell you why. So I thought at one point while you guys were reading, and I think this is a testimony to you, that what we really need here is a sort of bunch of people in the background going, oh, at every point made. We need essentially a rap battle audience, given that this is an argument in rhymed verse. Every sick burn that lands and every turd a fart joke.
You can sort of imagine that, like, at the time, maybe like people who were merchants were sort of like, yes, that's exactly what I'm doing, and whereas, like, sort of, I don't know, plowmen or people of that class would have shouted along with the sort of, yeah, totally.
You really need it. I mean, the only figure capable of standing up to the plowman is a vice, isn't it? You want a proper vice v plowman. That I'd pay to see. It does seem to me that the battle thing, it really gives all the tunes to the plowman in the second half. First half's a bit different, and that, I don't know. I mean, that would be really difficult to get an audience behind, because the other two are so quiet. It seemed to me. I mean, maybe it's just me reading it, but I was kind of gasping for air. It really didn't seem like other people were getting a fair, as it were, crack of the whip. Yeah. Or is the ploughman a vice?
Well, they all do. When the plowman says that he's worthy, he's more worthy because he leads a more virtuous life, because his life is continuous labor and he doesn't have any luxury or indulgence. They all say, yeah, but you do that because you have to. If you didn't have to, you would be idle, and that would be sinful.
He doesn't really have a comeback to that, does he? He goes, no, I'd still labour. You know, if it's like sort of winning the pools, isn't it? You know, no, I'd still live in the same house and still go to work. You know.
Well, the knight twits the plowman with idleness, and there is an obvious comeback to that. Not everyone in the knight's position is virtuous or industrious either. Though, Greg, I did think that the knight made a couple of good arguments in that second half. Did anything ping out at you?
Not particularly, I must admit. I didn't spot anything. I love, and again, actually not having the punctuation really freed it up, because I had great fun with the spitting and the sort of total spitting out those words at them. You know, there seemed to be times where he was, you know, you could just imagine him sort of getting angrier and angrier and then just going, "Ah!" at the start of every speech.
Yes, it was very nicely done, and I did like the energy he brought. I think that you know, in a theatrical sense, the anger and resentment, the knight has to provoke, and then people have to keep that resistance, that tension going. So I think we may have reached the realm of final thoughts here. If I can coax one more thought out of each of you. Eric, coax.
Oh, I have so many thoughts on this. I actually took notes.
Speak as many thoughts as you wish.
No, there was a point where I was thinking of The Republic by Plato for some reason, where he goes, you know, specifically the, you know, art is bad section of The Republic, where it's like, yeah, this is imitation, it's bad. And it's like, well, yeah, but like you're writing this down, so this is imitation also. And sort of the hypocrisy of that. And like sort of, I don't know, just the whole debate thing of, you know, the plowman going, yes, I'm virtuous too, but then like you have the time to sit and chat with these two idiots. It kind of felt very, I don't know, sort of the being aware of itself as well, in a way. I don't know. It was fun to read though. Also very quick to read because of the rhyme. Yeah, I know it was fun. I would totally like try to love to watch it as, I don't know, maybe some sort of wrestling match, maybe or arm wrestling.
Ooh,
I don't know. That would be a very long arm wrestling match.
Well, but think of the biceps you'd build up.
Yeah, totally.
Greg, do you have a final thought that you would share?
I really enjoyed that one. That was a lot of fun. It looked very dry on paper, if that makes sense. But actually, once you found with the rhythm, yeah, great fun. Well worth the read. And
Stephen, final thoughts?
Well, I don't know what I can add really. I mean, it's sort of kind of commentary. I suppose one thing I would add is just to build on Eric's point is it felt like the ploughman was channeling Socrates at that point where he went, you know, he's asking these questions of the knight, and the knight is just giving these answers, not understanding where he's going at all. And it reminded me of that sort of Socratic dialogue thing where Socrates is 9 moves ahead and gets you to say all these things and goes, right, what you've just said is. So I thought that was really interesting. And that might be a sort of dramatic point. And I share Greg's opinion really. And I think it's the clarity of the writing, because it was a cold read for me. I'd never read it before. I was just literally, I didn't know what was coming. And it was so put together that it was fairly clear where you were going with it, even on a first reading. You could you could make sense of it, and it's not, kind of, I must decide my mood and stick to that mood, like you do sometimes in sort of, more character-based plays. It's quite challenging stuff, but it makes you sound really smart. I didn't understand half of it, in a sense. But we're kind of going, oh, aren't we all clever?
Yeah, in some sense, I'd love to actually do a prepared reading of this and see if it felt, because I think it's intrigued all of our interest and it's entertaining to do. And I wonder if, say, if each person had a week to read it over and prepare, whether it might be more stage worthy then, whether the conflicts and resolutions and the various shifting coalitions of who sides with whom might become a little clearer. One thing that I do feel in duty bound to flag up is that one thing that they all agree on is that women are of less consequence than men, because women can't ever talk about one thing without mentioning 20 other things, and also what do they think they are doing by all this fancy apparel they're wearing, because they're really all the same in the dark. And other such like palatable sayings. So yeah, again, intriguing moment. But I do think that this play is intriguing and it merits further study. I think the comparisons with Plato and with Socratic dialogues are not at all misplaced. It's a philosophical dialogue as much as it is a theater piece, and maybe it does need a Greek chorus or a kick line in the Mel Brooks kind of style. In any case, I would like to thank our readers. I would like to point any listeners we still have at this point to other works of Heywood's and Rastell's that may be on the Beyond Shakespeare YouTube channel, which you should all go and check out. So until we meet again, come back, Rob, all is forgiven. It's goodbye from us.
And just to say thank you to Liza for being a wonderful special host tonight. And yes,
thanks very much. Yes.
We hope Rob's well.
We do hope Rob is well. I plan to have a large beer, curl up, and make vowel sounds. Farewell to all. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye.